Welcome back to Following No One on a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 121, and we're doing interludes 7, 8, and 9, and chapters 73 and 74 of Rhythm of War. Paul, how are you?
Great. I'm excited. I always love interludes. Big time. And I'm so excited because we've made it to part 4. I think part 4 and part 5 is where things really start going Sanderlanche crazy level of reveals. So I cannot wait to dive in.
We have returned to a Szeth interlude. I think this is our first Szeth POV of Rhythm of War. We haven't seen him since the end of Oathbringer. Elliot, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good because we're talking about the Stormlight Archive as always. I think I enjoy interludes less now that I understand them more. If that makes any sense. I'm with you, Paul. I do enjoy the interludes, but I don't know. They make too much sense nowadays. This set of 3, they were all fairly relevant. I knew all the characters and what they were talking about. I understood. Yes. I kind of miss the Ishik wandering through the Pure Lake talking to random people about nonsense. Like there was just
I do agree. These were just chapters now. This was like maybe a glimpse over at the other story kind of thing. These aren't our classic interludes where it's like, oh, here's one little thing you get to learn about. This thing exists. Here's this. And you have no idea what's going on. You're dropped in completely blind. That was my favorite thing about the interludes. Being completely blind, just dropped in point blank, but knowing that there's something that we're going to be able to pull from it. And this is different. It just felt like chapters mostly.
Yeah.
But we had Szeth, so we always seem to save Szeth for these interludes or something. So, do you think in his book 5, he's still his only parts are going to be in interludes?
No,
I would hope not.
I'd hope not as well, but I would cry, Brandon, if that were the case.
While we're on this topic, where's Axes, the collector? Come on, where's
Ishik? Well, did we find that out?
Who cares? We haven't seen Ishik since the first interlude of The Way of Kings.
He's supposed to find Hoyd. That sounds important.
He was supposed to find Hoyd. That is true. Somebody told him to go find Hoyd. Have you guys gone back and reread that chapter and tried to figure out who is telling him to go find Hoyd?
No,
but kind now
I feel like I should.
You should.
Okay. I'll go look back. Maybe.
All right. 2 words to summarize episode 121. Elliot.
I have loopholes and manipulation.
All right. Paul.
I have broken trust.
All right. Let's use these 4 words and talk about Rhythm of War. All right, Elliot, loopholes and manipulation. Who found a loophole and who's manipulating who?
The Fused have apparently found a loophole in the past. So in our flashback episode where, help me pronounce this word, Ulim?
They pretend it's a double O in the audiobook.
It's one of those names that just kind of sounds awkward off your tongue as a English speaker, I guess. Ulim, the Fused. I guess I'm assuming he's a Fused. He's a Voidspren, maybe. I should say that, huh?
Yeah.
Ulim the Voidspren is talking with Venli and is explaining a number of things that are very interesting. But one of which that he talks about is that he's found a way around the Oath Pact. So at this point in time, Town is still holding strong on Braze. It has not broken yet. And yet, they've found a loophole and a way around him to get to Roshar. Super intriguing. And then I'm also going to loop in Szeth into my loophole discussion in that I am terrified. Szeth is starting to doubt Dalinar. I'm just in general kind of terrified of Szeth on the whole, but I've been less terrified lately because he's aligned himself like completely with Dalinar. So it's like, whew, okay, we don't have to worry about Szeth. He's on Dalinar's side. He's going to do whatever he's told. And then in this interlude, we realize that maybe there's some chinks there, some loopholes. So I'm a little worried. And then manipulation, we see a lot of manipulation in these chapters, mainly from Taravangian and Ulim.
Yeah. I am looking forward to talking about Szeth and Taravangian. Paul?
Big time. I love Szeth. Everyone knows this if you've watched this far. If this is the first episode you're watching or listening to of our podcast, I love Szeth. He's my favorite character. And this, we got a different aspect or a different level of depth with Szeth. We learn about his family a little bit. We learn about his history. And like Elliot was saying, I feel like we're starting to see, like, honestly, we're starting to see a motivation for Szeth. Something that we haven't really seen. He's always taken orders, and we know there are some, like, pullbacks from things, like things he wants to not do. Like, he doesn't want to kill innocent people, right? But he's been made to do so for a long time now. But here we start to get glimpses of what would be further ideals of being a skybreaker, right?
Yep.
And I don't remember the terminology for it, but it sounded like he was to go basically uphold the law. I guess in his choice of place, he wants to go back to
Shinovar.
He wants to go back to Shinovar and, quote, I believe, cleanse it or everything, which is doesn't sound like good news. And so this did make me worried. Right now, I do trust that Szeth would not go like behind Dalinar, like would not like abandon Dalinar, would be there until he kind of has a pseudo blessing or like given allowance to leave. Also, I don't know if I addressed my words, but it's pretty tied to this directly. My words were broken trust. Broken is a reference just to Szeth. Broken specifically by Taravangian was really destructive to him, and the Shin people who deemed him truthless, right? Which was very like destructive to him, and that's got to be his motivation for going back to Shinovar and that as a mission. So this is entirely broken, and the thing is, with stuff that Taravangian tells him, which we'll talk about more later, Interlude 9. He needs to trust it, but like, why would he? Why would he trust anything Taravangian says? He says he's like not going to, and so it's just like, it's just a mess. It's just a big mess.
It is a big mess. That's a great way to put it. Okay, so here's what I'll say. I do trust Szeth. At this point in the story, I do trust Szeth. I do not trust all of the voices in his ear. He has Nightblood, who I don't trust a single inch, which Szeth doesn't either, so we're fine there. I don't trust Szeth's High Spren. Szeth's High Spren makes an appearance here. He hasn't given Szeth his name. He calls him an acolyte, which is very like cult stigma on that word. And then the High Spren is beginning to peel back Szeth's third ideal and make him question it. Szeth's third ideal, or second ideal, third ideal, one of them, third ideal, I think, is I will follow Dalinar Kholin. He has completely anchored himself to Dalinar, and Elliot, you said something about this with your words. And any time that Szeth sees that Dalinar doubts himself, he begins to doubt his ideal, which could have some bad implications for us moving forward. So I do have faith that Szeth is a good guy at this point. What I do not have faith in is the Skybreaker model around him and how it could influence him.
Yeah, we've talked before about how, or at least I've talked before, about how Szeth appears to be one of the most powerful people in this whole story. And that's before you start to think about Nightblood. And so Szeth with Nightblood might be the most destructive force on Roshar.
Yeah.
Odium included in that discussion. And so, like I said with my words, I was feeling way more comfortable before I read this interlude because I was like, okay, we've got Szeth under control. After reading this interlude, I'm not so sure Szeth is under control as much as I was before. So, yikes.
Yeah. Let's talk about 7 and 9 together. 7 is... Szeth has a light wing over him to make him look like any Alethi soldier. And Szeth is trying to pretend like he's bored on this guard duty. He's Dalinar's personal bodyguard. And Dalinar says, "Oh, you need to look bored and look less like Szeth." And he's having trouble looking relaxed, and he thinks to himself, how does anybody relax with life? I don't understand how to do that. Well, I thought that was funny.
It shows like his intensity and how like honestly detached he is from normal life.
Yes.
Normal like a social life. Like he has no idea how people really interact. Like that's not on his mind. It has never been on his mind really, as far as we know. Like in recent times of the stories we've read, he's had no. It is business. He is told to do this, and he does that. That's it. That's his interaction with people.
Yes.
And so it's kind of crazy. Like he does not know basic things, like basic like social or understanding world things, which is peculiar. But I'm really hoping that if we get to start seeing more or hearing glimpses more into his past, that we could see that, there was a normal kid, Szeth, who grew up and had friends or things, and and maybe we can pull that out and make him another like humanized character. That's my hope, is kind of the redemption in that regard with Szeth. And I was beyond excited whenever I saw that we get mention of his family, his father, and I believe it mentions a sister.
It does.
I don't remember much about the sister, but it talks a little bit about the father. Mentions that his father also wielded an honor blade. Wasn't the same one, right? It was not the Windrunner one. It was a different. Was it the Skybreaker? In my head, it's the Skybreaker.
I don't think we've been told.
I do not know. Okay, we might not know, but wielded an honor blade that was not the Windrunner, I believe.
Yep.
And that was like that was like his father's punishment, and I believe brought shame, which is, I assume, why we always hear Szeth's son Vellano, not his. Vellano would be his grandfather, not his dad. He doesn't like claim his father, I guess, in his title, and I assume that's tied to this. His father maybe brought shame, did something crazy, and is now punished to become a warrior. In Shin culture,
you're thinking about this a little bit backwards.
Okay.
Szeth is proud of his father. He really admires his father. And a takeaway we get from this interlude is Szeth's father said the greatest thing you can do in the world is add to it as opposed to subtract from it. And then something happened where Szeth's father was given an honor blade, and he was taught to detract from the world as opposed to add. And I'm under the assumption that that is against his father's will, that he doesn't want to be carrying a blade. I don't know if that's written out, but that's my understanding. So when Szeth is deemed truthless and is given the Windrunner sword, he goes by Szeth-son-Honor because he doesn't want to sully the name of his father. He is so ashamed of himself that he doesn't take his father's name because he honors his father. He takes his grandfather's name. Who knows what his grandfather did? But he's staying away from his father's name because he is so ashamed of himself and what he has done. That is not the case in this interlude. He's moved past that by now, because now he names himself Szeth-son-Honor in this interlude. So he's fairly moved past all of that. But when we first meet Szeth, he is trying not to diminish the name of his father.
And that made me really excited when I saw Szeth-son-Honor, by the way, because it does show that like development, that change. So very grateful, very happy about that.
I enjoyed these segments as well, these references to Szeth's family, which you're absolutely right, brings another dimension into his story that we haven't really gotten into before. And I wondered if that's a little taste of what, book 5 might start to get into. Is this just a little bit of a pre-look at what we might start diving into in book 5, which might be Szeth's relationship with his family or the legacy that he is carrying on, perhaps?
Yeah, I would assume so. That we get to go to Shinovar in book 5. That's just a big assumption of mine.
We better. I've been trying to cross off stuff on my map, and we haven't even touched Shinovar yet, so
I feel
like on that.
I feel like Shinovar and, was it Erie that's above Shinovar, are the only two places we've never really spent that much time. I think we've at least visited everywhere else.
There's a bunch of little random corners that we haven't been to, but yeah, as far as major areas, I think you're right.
Nightblood comes back into our story with his iconic line, "I think you should draw me, Szeth." And Szeth leaves him to be a sentinel while he talks to his high spren. And Nightblood says, yes, I can do that. You should leave me drawn, though, so if somebody evil comes along, I can really get him. And Michael Kramer has a lot of fun with that line in the audiobook. I really enjoy listening to this interlude simply because of Michael Kramer's performance with Nightblood.
It's true. And it was, we always get some fun moments, I feel like, with Nightblood dialogue. And this one, Szeth was like, whenever I draw you, you like literally suck the life force out of me. And he's like, that's nonsense. I would never do that. I would never do such a thing. I like you. I do like you, like, and it's always fun and ridiculous.
Nightblood is somehow, and I can't even understand it, Nightblood is somehow equal parts cute and likable and utterly terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know how. He just is. It is.
He just straight up name drops Vasher and Vivenna. Like, Brandon Sanders just assumes that you know about Warbreaker at this point. Let's talk about his high spread. So the fourth ideal of the Skybreakers is you have to choose a crusade. And Szeth, ever since Ideal 2, back in Oathbringer, Szeth has said to himself, I already know what my ideal is. I'm going to go back home and I'm going to cleanse Shinovar. And we don't know really what happened to Szeth to make him, well, he's made truthless because he claims either the Knights Radiant are returning or the Voidbringers are returning, or maybe a combination of that. And the Shin people say, no, that's impossible. We are deeming you truthless. I assume this is just a ritual of Shinovar. We're deeming you truthless. You have to carry this stone with you, and whoever holds this stone, you have to follow their word verbatim. And one thing leads to another. His stone gets to Taravangian. Taravangian orders the assassination of kings and queens all across Roshar. That's what the interludes are all about for during the Way of Kings, and a little bit in Words of Radiance as well. So Szeth blames the Shin people and Taravangian personally for what he has to go through. Because by the end of this interlude, Szeth overhears that Taravangian has asked for an oath stone, and requested an oath stone from Dalinar. Dalinar doesn't know what it is, but Szeth recognizes it as an oath stone request. And so then that leads us into Interlude 9, where Szeth goes and confronts Taravangian of like, why the heck are you trying to get your hands on an oath stone? What are you doing? What does Szeth tell himself at the end of Interlude 7?
Is it end of Interlude 7 when he's saying basically, don't trust Taravangian, I'm gotta stop that guy?
Yes, but it's a little more aggressive than that. He says, I need to dispose of him before he kills Dalinar.
Yeah.
And we are under the assumption, I asked you guys this a couple episodes ago, is Taravangian in danger? Is he going to reach the end of the book? And you guys were like, yeah, I mean, he's not really a threat anymore. Unless Szeth thinks he is. If Szeth thinks Taravangian's a threat, Taravangian could be in some serious trouble. But he doesn't just go outright and stab him because Dalinar wants him alive. So he does go confront him, at least in I-9, doesn't just go stab him. But what are you guys as concerned about Taravangian as Szeth is?
I don't think I'm as concerned as Szeth is. A small part of me actually has a little bit of hope for Taravangian. I a little bit hope that he might, based on the discussion he had with Dalinar not too long ago, the logic in Taravangian might start to acknowledge that Dalinar has a hope, or that's what Dalinar does have, that Dalinar has a chance, that his hope may come through in the end, and that maybe Taravangian might decide that, oh, actually your side does have a shot, so I'll help you out. Szeth doesn't see that. Szeth is you're a plotter who's gonna continuously try and undermine us. I need to take you out.
Let's talk about I-9 real quick, because it jumps to Taravangian, and Taravangian's having a weak day. Never mind. He's having a dumb day, I should say. And we're expecting a confrontation from Szeth, based on the interlude that we just read. And it does come, but first, Renarin shows up to Taravangian, and Renarin has a couple choice words for Taravangian. Did you guys get this?
That Renarin is on the train that I was actually just talking about. That I have hope that Taravangian might turn over to the good guys, if you will. Renarin seems to be thinking the same thing. He seems to be there to talk to Taravangian, to say, hey, I don't think you're completely beyond all help here. There's a chance you can come back.
Renarin says, I grew up with my father, and my father showed me that no man is ever too far gone that he can't find his way back. And it's a really cool moment from Renarin. He has a lot of these. He doesn't get that much page time, but when he does, he really makes it count. And he like awkwardly extends his hand to Taravangian to as you know, some sort of peace offering or something, and Taravangian thinks it's awkward, and Renarin thinks it's awkward, but he really is trying to extend a hand, literally and metaphorically, of we can help you if you open up to us and talk to us. We have the ability to bring you back here. You don't have to keep going down this road that you're on.
And then the flip side of that is like 2 paragraphs later, down on the same page, where Szeth shows up and says the opposite.
Yep.
Renarin has just said, no man is too far gone. And then Szeth shows up and says, we can't all return from the dark. There are some acts that once committed will always taint a man. Definitely the opposite sentiment that Renarin was just showing.
Yep. Taravangian, once he figures out that it's Szeth, kind of like word vomits on Szeth. He's like, here's my opportunity. I need to do what? Is he helping? Is he manipulating? What's Taravangian at right now? Do you guys trust this info that he drops on Szeth, or do you not?
I will say I trust it.
Okay.
I'll actually be quick to say it because it shows it. I don't remember the direct quote, but it does show Taravangian's thought process some, and how the only reason he's sharing this is because he feels safe doing so, because Renarin is there, and so Odium can't really like see him right now. So he's like, this is my one opportunity to say this like candidly. And so he like basically says that Nightblood is like something that Odium hasn't taken into account, and Odium fears Nightblood. Odium like actively is afraid of Nightblood and what Nightblood can do. And so he's trying to give Szeth the scoop. He's like, all right, listen, you need to go fight him right now while he can't see you with Nightblood. But why would Szeth believe anything that Taravangian says? And yeah, there's a lot there.
There is a random sentence in here that has nothing to do with anything else that Taravangian says that I think can sway the credibility of this either left or right. Taravangian dismisses Szeth's... Well, Taravangian tells Szeth that his father is dead. 2 interludes previous, Szeth is under the assumption that his father is alive. His father is alive and well, and he is a bearer of an honor blade. So that one line, I think, might give credit or take away credit from the rest of what Taravangian is saying here. If he's trying to manipulate Szeth, and let's assume for a second that Taravangian is lying. What are the consequences of doing what Taravangian tells Szeth to do? Well, first of all, what does Taravangian tell Szeth to do?
Basically, go fight Odium.
Yes, but there's a second part to that.
He says to give Dalinar the sword and send Dalinar into the visions to go fight Odium.
Right. So
right.
He says the sword will go with him in those visions. Give it to Dalinar, and he can use it to kill Odium in the vision. We'll back up a second. First of all, I think Nightblood is going to eat up Dalinar as soon as Dalinar touches it, because there's no way that Nightblood thinks Dalinar is a good guy with how much killing he's done. Second, you could just be delivering Nightblood to Odium on a silver platter. Yeah?
I'm still stuck back on. You asked the question of is Taravangian manipulating Szeth? I'm actually wondering, is Taravangian manipulating Taravangian? The Taravangian that we see in the scene. Paul, I'm with you. I trust him. I trust that Taravangian. That Taravangian is trying to do the right thing, at least a little bit. However, that's not the Taravangian that wrote the notes that the Taravangian in the scene is reading. And so I don't think I trust these directions, because I think it's quite plausible that smart Taravangian is manipulating dumb Taravangian to send Szeth on this errand to go do the thing that might be potentially helping Odium in the long run.
So that's an interesting distinction. I'm really glad you brought it up, because Taravangian tells Szeth two things. He says, Odium fears the sword, and your father is dead. And then it says Taravangian goes off script and says, give the sword to Dalinar. That is off script of give the sword to Dalinar. The other two were on script. Smart Taravangian wrote that. The third one is give the sword to Dalinar.
Well, and what is in the script that Taravangian specifically notices is multiple times written, do not tell Szeth to go to Dalinar.
Yep.
And so that's where I start to wonder, like, is smart Taravangian pulling the reverse psychology on dumb Taravangian?
This is getting confusing.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna draw dumb Taravangian's attention to Dalinar so that his emotions will kick in and say, I can't do this. Go talk to Dalinar. You got to do it this way. When that's actually what smart Taravangian wants to happen all along.
I see what you're saying. That kind of makes sense.
I don't like it, but I do see what you're saying.
So with smart Taravangian writing this, it makes sense because so my concern right now, and why I really don't think Taravangian was lying or trying to manipulate Szeth, is Taravangian has nothing to gain. Like, why would he help Odium if he does ultimately deep down want Odium to lose? He just knows it's impossible. So he struck his deal to save Kharbranth,
Right.
or his people, right? And now is his opportunity to kind of talk candidly. Why would he want to deliver Nightblood on a silver platter to Odium? Which, if this is old smart Taravangian manipulating current Taravangian, being like, "Oh yeah, I have this in my notes, what I need to tell him," and it's manipulative information, that makes sense. That makes total sense. Of dang, Taravangian is kind of on the same side as Odium there in the past. But right now, I don't think he's trying to manipulate Szeth. And sorry, excuse me. I feel like it's a little too much of 3D chess for the do not tell Dalinars to be reverse psychology. If so, I'd be impressed, but man, that'd be pretty deep.
If anyone were to play 3D chess, though, it's smart Taravangian on a good day.
That's true. I just hope if that's the case, I hope it explains that, because if not, I would never pick that part up.
Right.
I do think Nightblood is the key. With a few of the hints that we've gotten dropped, they do align with this that might point to Nightblood can destroy anything. Nightblood can destroy Odium, potentially, perhaps.
Right.
I think where I'm not so sure is, give it to Dalinar and send him into the visions alone to go face Odium with it.
Yep.
That starts to sound like not a great idea to me.
Yeah.
I will say, though, the moment, if it happens, when Nightblood is drawn in the presence of Odium, oh my goodness, that is going to be the scene to end all scenes.
I agree. I would like to see it happen.
Anything else for Interlude 9?
Not here.
All right, back up to interlude 8 real quick. I don't think there's anything to get out of this chapter besides one thing. The very last two sentences of the interlude, Chiri-Chiri starts talking to Risen, and Chiri-Chiri says Risen needs food, and Risen like freaks out that her dragon just started talking to her, and that's the end of the scene. But I'm thoroughly convinced that Chiri-Chiri is a crab dragon, a dragon in the classical sense of wise, talking, like a sentient being. It's just a Roshar dragon, so it looks like a crab.
I agree with this. If it's talking, then we have to assume so, I think.
Yeah.
We have to assume the classic dragon.
Though apparently a dragon on some sort of awakening process, or maybe it's more simple than that. Maybe it's just a growth process of Chiri-Chiri is too young and hasn't developed, to that level yet. And we're just kind of seeing that, maybe.
Yeah, first words, Chiri-Chiri's
Yeah.
first words,
Aw, shed a tear.
Very sweet.
Anything else
There's-
for I8?
There was one other thing I did highlight, and I don't know that we know enough to really dive into it, but I just want to note it in case it comes back up later and is important. It's referenced a couple times in this chapter that Chiri-Chiri feels the rhythms of Roshar.
Yeah.
Which isn't surprising. If Chiri-Chiri, if their species is native to Roshar, that doesn't surprise me at all. There's just one of those references seems to maybe hint at something more. I'll read it. It says, Chiri-Chiri could not hide. The rhythm whispered that she could not do only easy things. Dark times were coming, the hollow skulls warned, and the vibrations of that place, encouraging, demanding, be better. You must be better. That sort of like voices or kind of commands coming through the rhythms that she's feeling, that seems of note to me. That this whole, I think you could maybe draw the assumption that that's purely just talking about the speaking that we get at the end of the chapter of just you need to be more of a player in this, therefore you need to grow more and develop the ability of speech. But I kind of wonder if it's more like what is this voice or this vibration, this rhythm that is speaking to Chiri-Chiri, be better, you must be better. Like, where's that coming from and what does it mean? I'm intrigued.
I wrote it off as her closeness to the Dawn Shard, because Dawn Shards whisper to people all the time. I say all the time. With the one example we have,
it has 100% of the time we've
Yes.
interacted with a Dawn Shard.
What is Risen's Dawn Shard again? What does it tell her to do in Dawn Shard?
I just remember it was like a painting, a golden glowing painting. I
Yeah,
do not remember anything that it said.
It commands her to do something though.
Unite them.
Nah, that is the Unity Dawn Shard theory.
Uh-huh.
But I don't remember. Does it command her to change?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
I don't remember either.
Anyway, I wrote that off as Chiri-Chiri's closeness with the Dawn Shard. That there's literally a Dawn Shard sitting right next to her, and so you're gonna hear voices.
Okay. That's an interesting way to go with it. I didn't remember. Well, I remembered that Risen is our Dawn Shard because I still think that's going to be incredibly important, although it hasn't really come into play yet. But associating those two, okay, that might be a way to explain it.
Because that's where the Dawn Shard was hiding in the hollow skulls that she's talking about back on the homeland.
Right.
That carapace chamber thing.
Okay. Yep. I'll buy in. I'm tracking.
Cool. Anything else?
Not on that one.
All right. into part 4. We have a Venli flashback chapter and then a Venli present day chapter to hit off part 4 for us. The Venli flashback chapter, this whole scene is one long dialogue scene between Ulim and Venli. And Ulim kind of gives us a history lesson, actually, and Venli gives us a couple rules about Voidspren and what they know and how Ulim is manipulating her. Venli says that Ulim can read her thoughts immediate, like right off the bat. They just bonded like at the end of part 3 a couple episodes ago, and Ulim can read Venli's thoughts. Compare that to Kaladin, where it has taken Syl and Kaladin years to read each other's thoughts word for word. And there was a point where he had just said the third ideal, and he's changing Syl from like a spear to a shield to a sword, like mid-fight while fighting Szeth, right? And that was a new power for them. They were reading each other's thoughts, and then when they were sneaking around the tower earlier in Rhythm of War, he's sending her telepathic sentences of the singers are looking up into the sky to look for flying windrunners, and he's having trouble sending her like specific words. Now compare that to Ulim and Venli, and Ulim can hear every thought that Venli has. I just wanted to highlight that of like the speed that occurs here.
I wonder if that's an indicator of the maturity of the spren, not necessarily the human
The bond.
or singer.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
bonder.
Okay. I'd buy that.
Just thinking about, how when we first met Syl, she was incredibly naive, very childish, very just awakened sort of thing. And she's come a very long way from that. She's matured a lot. Whereas Ulim is old. Syl is also ancient, right? But she's kind of had a reawakening. Ulim has this wealth of knowledge, apparently. And so he is apparently coming into it with the maturity. So I wonder if that's part of why.
Yeah, could be. Every time that Venli begins to question herself, in this chapter, Ulim is there with a quick like, "Bet you could be great if you find this power," or "You're doing great, don't back up now," or "Your ancestors were idiots, don't listen to them." Like he's got every phrase ready for Venli's questioning, because the listeners, the ancient listeners who broke away from Odium, wrote all these songs down of, don't bond Spren, don't worship our old gods, the Unmade and the old Spren. And Ulim is like, yeah, but what if you did, though? That sounds kind of fun.
Reading it seems so obvious that Ulim is the devil on the shoulder.
Yes.
Not the angel. It seems painfully clear. Like, Venli, why do you not realize that he's manipulating you? But I thought too about, it's easy to see that from an outside perspective. It's way harder to see that sort of thing when it's happening to you. When someone comes to you and tells you, "Man, you're really good at that." Like, you really want to believe that when someone says that. Like, part of you just kind of swells inside, like, "Oh yeah, I am good at that, aren't I?" It's hard to see that when you're in the situation, as opposed to us from kind of the bird's eye view. You're like, "Yeah, okay, Venli, don't trust a word he says."
Right. Do either one of you want to walk through the history lesson that Ulim gives us? This is information that I already knew, but I forgot where I learned it from, and it's right here. So, for those of you who learned this for the first time, it'll be more fresh in your memories.
Yeah, I can definitely take this. Some big drops actually in this chapter. I got very excited. So Ulim just kind of starts rambling at some point to Venli and just talking about some of what's happened in the past and explaining a few things. And he even says things like, "You have no idea what I'm talking about, but here's what happened." And what he explains is that the Voidbringers were locked away on Braze. He doesn't mention Braze, but he says they've been locked away. And they were locked away so long that the Unmade decided to start a war without them. The implication there is almost like, oh, the Unmade got too impatient waiting for us to come back, that they just decided to start a war without them. And he even goes further and explains some more about the whole Ba'ado Mishram's relationship with the singers, which was really helpful for me. He explains that Ba'ado Mishram, the Unmade, tried to give the singers, I almost want to call it like pseudo forms of power.
Yeah.
That the void spren that can actually give those forms of power, they're all locked away. So the singers that are on Roshar couldn't actually access forms of power at whatever point in history this was. So Ba'ado Mishram took it upon themselves to do this and unlock these abilities and grant these powers to singers so that they could rise up and fight against the humans. Well, they did this. However, Ba'ado Mishram ended up linking to all of the singers. And so when the humans figured out, oh, we can just capture Ba'ado Mishram in a gemstone, similar to the way that Dalinar did with the Thrill, they did that. And then it crippled all of the singers because they were they were reliant on Ba'ado Mishram for their power. That explains that whole bit that happened that created the Parshmen that we got, that we entered this story with, right? These barely sentient beings who can't even speak a full sentence. This is why they had partnered with Ba'ado Mishram to try and achieve the forms of power that they couldn't get because the Voidspren were locked away on Braze. But it backfired when the humans were able to lock up Ba'ado Mishram and they all became kind of trapped within their own heads. Am I tracking all of that correctly? Did I make any mistakes that you can tell me about, Trevor?
Yep, you're 100% correct so far.
I think it is just so cool to have this information. This isn't something that I thought needed explaining. If you asked me, like, oh yeah, explain why they really lost their forms, their powers, all this stuff, their like capacity, if you will, I wouldn't have had an answer for you really. But I didn't really think about it that much. I was like, yeah, they lost it with the Oath Pact or whatever.
Right.
All this stuff. There's a lot of things I can kind of point to and be like, oh yeah, it was because of this. But we have like the reason, like the cause and effect of this happening. And I think that's super cool to learn about that. And also, yeah, just learning more of our Unmade drama. It's been a minute since we've like been concerned about an Unmade, I think.
Yeah.
Which this sheds an interesting light on the Recreants. So the Recreants happen sometime during this, right? Where Ba'ado Mishram is imprisoned and then the Knights Radiant put up their swords somewhere in there. And that they've discovered, oh, like we're the Voidbringers. We destroyed Ashen before coming here. We're gonna put up our swords. And I wonder if there's more to it than that, and it has to do with disarming the singers of their forms, and that's unethical. And so they're putting up their swords because let's say the bondsmiths at the time were like, yeah, we need to do this. And then everybody else was like, no, or, like the Skybreakers or somebody was like, hey, we need to do this and lock away Bot and Mishram, and everybody else was like, no, we don't. But then it comes in the part of like, is it worth, they kill their spren to do this? So the Recreance still has some question marks on it of why and when it plays into Bot and Mishram and locking her away.
I'm on the same thought train of trying to tie this to the Recreants and explain that. I'm almost wondering if they came up with the plan to imprison Ba, Ado Mishra, maybe the Spren even came up with that idea, not knowing exactly what it was going to do to the singers. And then when they did it, they successfully did it, and they realized what they had just done to the singers, that they had taken what was an entire culture, a people group, and reduced them down to these people who can't even speak their thoughts anymore. If that was enough to cause them to do what they did, or maybe that and the revelation of we are the original Voidbringers came out at the same time, and that combination there was what caused them to betray their spren and walk away. It does seem like we're getting more puzzles, more pieces for the puzzle.
Yeah. Not sure. Anything else for Ulim?
Just a quick one on the loophole that I talked about at the very beginning of the episode. This is the chapter where Ulim explains the loophole. And I think I follow it in that the Voidspren, Ulim, for example, are able to travel to Roshar through the Everstorm, which at this point exists in Shadesmar, but not in the physical realm yet. But he references some sort of like, our agents have to travel to the location of the Everstorm, which, by the way, is out in the middle of the ocean. Then, like, arrive at the right place at the right time and use the right gemstone to pull the Voidspren into the physical realm from Braze.
Yeah.
And then you can take that gemstone with the Voidspren in it back to Roshar and do what Venli did with it and awaken him and bond him. So it sounds like a very complicated process, but somehow there's a way around the whole Oath Pact thing, which that seemed very important because a lot of things in our history track here seem to hinge around the Oath Pact.
I'm wondering. So let's talk about storms for a second. The Everstorm existing in Shadesmar only doesn't really compute in my head. Like what does that even mean? I don't know what that means. But I wonder if the Everstorm, if locking away the Unmade caused the Everstorm to stop. We're on a circular globe, right? And I wonder if the Everstorm is just stalled on the other side of the planet for millennia, whatever, 4,500 years. And so in order to pull Voidspren through, you have to go there, and it's stationary. And so the high storm keeps going around the planet, and the reason why it's not entirely predictable is because it has to pass the Everstorm, and it's going to slow it down or speed it up based on, like random effects or whatever.
Physics, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, based on whatever X. And because if a high storm was rotating the planet, I would assume that would be predictable, to the
Yeah.
exact hour or whatever. But because the Everstorm is sitting there, it's got to pass it every time, and so it's delayed or sped up every couple times. I'm just wondering if the Everstorm is actually on Roshar. It's just on the other side of the planet, just chilling.
Maybe.
I don't entirely get what the significance of that would mean.
It means it's not.
I see what you mean.
It means it's not crossing Roshar and not producing void light, which means we're not producing void spren.
Okay. So, like, hypothetically, if it wasn't stopped, there would have just always been void spren and void light and everything. It would have been like, quote, a normal part of Roshar.
Right. As we see Roshar this last year.
Okay.
But then also there's people that have said that the Everstorm is new. So maybe that's not I don't know.
Is there supposed to, if that's the case, should there be some equivalent for Lifelight? Or
The Life Storm.
anything like that? Or, yeah, exactly, the Life Storm. That'd be pretty cool.
Which Ulim does mention a storm in the south. Well, the first time we meet him. So when Venli goes into the high storm and bonds him, Ulim's like, yo, is this the storm in the south? And that's there's a one-liner for you. I don't know.
Interesting. Maybe so. Maybe if so, then I would give this much more thought. Right now, I'm like, that's in my head. It's a bit of a stretch. But if that's the case, then I'm like, all right, it hit 3. That's our magic number. 3 and 10.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would assume the life storm is actually a blizzard because we're in the southern hemisphere. That would be ironic.
Could be.
And the Feverstone Keep has got all those sideways icicle things. Remember that?
Yeah. Do we know where that is yet? We don't, do we?
No, you don't. Or I don't.
Interesting.
Anyway. Whew. That was a spark. Anyway. Anything else for 73?
Negative.
All right, and then current day Venli, 74. Venli is hiding Lirin and plus family kind of in plain sight. She pulled them to go help with the Radiants that are unconscious in the tower. Lirin is just caring for them as he does. And Venli and Relaine walk in and they have a conversation with Lirin in this chapter. Did you guys get anything out of this?
I got that Lirin is still very much on the cooperation is the best resistance train. He's actively arguing for, hey, we need to cooperate with the singers, with the fused. Relaine brings in these maps that he's found that I guess when they first invaded, Relaine was trying to figure out, what can I do to be productive here? How can I help? And what he came up with was, well, no one's paying attention to all these maps. Maybe I should go grab these. So he does. And he hides them, he stashes them somewhere, and then goes and gets them now. But Lirin's first response to this is, we should go turn these in and see if we can gain some favor with the fused.
Yep.
It's like, I totally appreciate the whole pacifist and I don't know, peace angle that he's going for. His logic is not bad. His logic is we can't fight these people, so we might as well protect ourselves by not angering them.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that. But when every little thing that comes across is, we need to turn this in, is like, buddy, you remember what side you're on here?
Yeah. The servants that come in to help them have shash glyphs on their forehead from the end of part 3 here, where Kaladin dives off the balcony and flies through the atrium, and everybody's like, whoa. Kaladin still fights. And so everybody puts shash glyphs on their forehead because he gives them hope that there's someone still fighting. And Lirin, having your estranged son's slave brands on this random guy's foreheads might be a little sore spot for you. And he says, you guys are stupid. That's just going to get more people killed. You need to not support Kaladin. And everybody else is like, I can do whatever I want.
Don't care. Yeah.
And And that's a good example for me of the difference. I think I would side with Lirin. I guess it's kind of implied that Lirin is, I don't remember exactly what he says, but against the open display of rebellion, basically, of painting the Shash brand as a symbol. I agree with Lirin. I think that's a terrible idea. Don't provoke the enemy that you're kind of being oppressed by. But then I go to the other half of the conversation, is like, but at the same time, don't go out of your way to help the people that are oppressing you.
Right.
You know?
Who defends the Shash glyph in the scene? Besides the people wearing it, obviously. It's Venli.
Is it?
Venli says, no, you should let him. It gives him hope. Hope is a good thing. I just thought that was interesting. Because Venli is very much on the side of the downtrodden singer. The singer who has got the short end of the stick. I either live under the boot of the humans, or I live long enough to be turned into fused. That's what most singers have on their plate here. Of if the singers win, eventually I'm going to get turned into a fused and die. And they're going to take my body. Or if the humans win, they're going to turn us back into slaves. That's the lose-lose situation that Venli sees. So seeing these humans who are now under the boot of the fused have some hope, that goes along with a lot of things that Venli can subscribe to. Of hope is not a bad thing. That's what I'm looking for here. So
that's a really good point, Trevor. I did not think about this while reading that. Like about how it gives hope, and specifically what that means for Venli and her position as a listener, right?
yeah.
So that's really cool. My question has always just been, when are we going to see Lift?
Apparently she's in an aluminum cell somewhere, so
Tough.
Yeah, somebody needs to get Lift out, because Lift could be a big help here. And we had a moment where it almost seemed like Venli. Remember that moment where Venli tried to say her oath?
Yeah.
And it got rejected?
Because she hadn't presumably because she hadn't let Lift out.
Right. Her guess was that, I can't say this yet because here's someone right in front of me who's been captured, and I can't say an oath about freedom when there's someone in front of me who's been captured. We haven't revisited that yet. I hope we do soon.
What happened to Lift's AVR? We had a moment there where Lift was about to be like the coolest person on Roshar. That she had an AVR, she had Lifelight. We were just understanding what Lifelight was, and then she got locked up. What happened to her AVR?
Murray's had it for lunch.
Wow. Brutal.
No.
Tell me that's not on the list of possibilities.
He'd give it to one of his followers first, like before that, right?
He would sell it, yeah.
You're right.
He would sell it for like a lot of money or something, if not.
Or smuggle it off Roshar or something like that.
Or just flex and fry it up,
Each shoulder, one on each shoulder.
There you go.
That's what 6 of the desk has, one on each shoulder.
Yeah.
Anything else for this episode, gentlemen? All right, we are already into part 4. We can continue it next week. Small spoiler for you. The return of Shallan and Adolin next week. Back in Shadesmar. And I'm excited for it.
Whoa.
I did notice Shallan's name on the list of POVs at the start of part 4. And probably for the first time since Way of Kings, I got very excited about a Shallan POV. Because it was like, we kind of left them on a major cliffhanger. I need to go back and explore that again.
We did. It's kind of easy to forget about their storyline. It's been a while since we visited with them, so. And she's on the cover of the book. All right. Let's reconvene next week. Thanks for joining me, Paul and Eliot.
Onward we go.